think I finally figured out how I'm going to graze this cover crop in this field behind me. I'm Rob from Dowdle Family Farms, and this field behind me is on a journey to regenerate the soil with cover crops and livestock, especially with pigs. Let's go take a look at the field and we'll talk about how I plan on grazing it this year.
So the problem that I've had with this northern half of Field B is that it is just really underperforming. You can see right here how thin this cover crop is. There are a lot of weeds in it. And when I seeded this crop, I planted it with a mixture of sorghum Sudan grass, cowpeas, buckwheat, hybrid pearl millet, and there's a little bit of brassica in there as well. In fact, I seeded it at the same rate that I've seeded all of our cover crops this year, and it's just been really underperforming. As of the recording of this video, it was actually planted about 7 weeks ago. The history of this field is kind of complicated, but the short of it, it was in a perennial pasture that just had been really weedy. It had very little organic matter, and so it produced very little nutrition for our livestock in the perennial pasture, which is why we're regenerating it with cover crops and livestock. However, when we compare this field to the field where I've been grazing our sows on over the last 3 or 4 weeks, if we jump to that part of the farm, we planted that cover crop with the same mix. It was planted 3 weeks after this field, and you can tell that it looks so much better. Not only are the legumes growing better, but the forages are taller. And actually, within 3 weeks of planting, the field where we're grazing our sows, it had already looked so much better than the field north of Dowdle Road that looked so poor, and it was planted 6 weeks prior. So within 3 weeks, it caught up in terms of forage, even though we planted it later because the soil was in such much better shape. Because we've been so successful saving so much money grazing our breeder pigs on the cover crops over there where they are, the question that I was trying to determine is how do we capitalize on the financial investment that we have in this Field B north of Dowdle Road here. After all, we've spent nearly $70 per acre trying to grow any cover crops on them. And while the cover crops will pay for themselves in terms of soil health, we still need to be able to find a way to make it financially sound. So because this field was not growing much sorghum Sudan grass or anything else, and it was getting such a slow start, I was debating on whether to put the pigs in here or not so that I could at least grab some feed value out of the cover crop field that I planted here. However, waiting this long reminded me of something that I had forgotten about sorghum Sudan grass. Sorghum Sudan grass can grow very quickly, especially if it's in really good fertile soils. With soils high in organic matter and good soil structure and good soil health, sorghum Sudan grass will grow very quickly. It'll produce a lot of forage and you can graze it very quickly. However, sorghum Sudan grass in poor soils, it still grows really well. However, it does take longer for it to begin growing. I think what happens is it starts sending out those roots. It gathers enough energy from the nutrients in the soil. And then once the plant has a certain level of nutrients within the plant itself, it's able to send out root exudates to help feed soil life that will then in turn slowly help the plant grow. The thing is it doesn't happen just immediately because there are no nutrients in the soil, so it does take some time for that process to begin. Now, I may be completely wrong, but in my observation of growing sorghum Sudan grass as a cover crop for several years, in poor soils, it will eventually, after about 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, it'll start growing much faster than it did initially. So what I think I'm going to do with this cover crop is let it grow for another 3 or 4 weeks before grazing it. It'll allow those sunflowers, which are beautiful by the way, to go on and set some seed. It'll be good for the beneficial insects, it'll be good for wildlife, and cows and pigs later will come back and eat those sunflower seeds. But most importantly, the sorghum Sudan grass will have a good bit more time to put on more mass, more dry matter per acre. And when the cows come through and graze it, they'll get a lot of forage out of it. I'll pull the cows off of it, allow the sorghum Sudan grass to regrow and then graze it again. We may only get 2 grazings out of this sorghum Sudan grass this year. If this were in the other field, we could have already grazed it at least once and maybe be waiting on a second time to graze it. But because the soil is so poor here, we just are only going to get probably 2 or maybe 3 grazings out of it this year. After we graze it the second time, what we do then will probably depend more on the weather. If it looks like we're going to have a wet fall, then I may go on and plant some of our fall forages. If we don't have a wet fall and we are able to keep growing the sorghum Sudan grass, we'll just keep letting the sorghum Sudan grass grow. It's very drought tolerant and it performs really well. Once it dies after the first frost, then I can come back and graze pigs on it. They graze sorghum Sudan grass really well after it's died. Of course, we have to watch out for prussic acid and that kind of thing as well. But we'll just have to see and be kind of flexible on what we do with this field after the sorghum Sudan grass. But the first thing we'll do is graze it with cows in another 2 or 3 weeks. Now we do have another 5 acres of this cover crop just to the west of this field that we can graze with cows as well. We don't have good pig fencing over there yet, but we'll probably follow that same strategy there as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it offers a little bit of insight into how sorghum Sudan grass grows and then how you determine whether you graze it with pigs, whether you graze it with cows, or maybe you even need to mow it. Hope you have a great day. Take care.